We are now live.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, don't want to get these wet. Welcome everybody to this next installment of Live at the Wellness Garden. I am your Maryland Magrum Center Garden Coordinator, Andreas, and today we'll be talking about succession planting. In this bed right here, we recently sowed some carrots, and you can see these are coming up pretty nicely. Do you mind panning the camera over these carrots, please, Brianna?
Yeah.
You can see these little seedlings coming up. These are going to need to be thinned soon. We're also going to talk about thinning in this video, which is the process of removing some of the seedlings that you sowed to reduce the density. But we're going to be planting some carrots right here. And so basically what succession planting is you plant one row of crops and then you wait for a certain period of time and then plant another. That way you get a staggered harvest. So with some crops, such as carrots, especially root crops, you're only getting one harvest. You're pulling up the whole plant and you're getting the root. So if you want to have a continuous harvest of carrots instead of just getting all of your carrots at once, then what you might want to do is wait like a week or 2 or 3 and then plant another row next to it so that very shortly after you can have more carrots. So that's what we're going to be doing today. This row is already clear. We're going to be planting these right next to the peas, which is great because peas are nitrogen fixers. We can talk about that really quick since we have a bunch of time and this is not going to take long. Nitrogen fixing plants like peas, so pretty much all of your legumes are nitrogen fixers, essentially create natural fertilizer in the soil. They partner with beneficial bacteria that live on their roots in these little tiny nodules, and these bacteria have the ability to pull nitrogen directly out of the atmosphere, which plants normally can't do, and then they exchange it with the plant in exchange for sugars and other food sources. So it's a symbiotic relationship that plants have with these bacteria. So usually after you finish growing your nitrogen fixers, most of the nitrogen a lot of the nitrogen will be made available to the plants that you're growing the next crop cycle. Some of it is going to be available continuously as the plants are growing, but not a very large portion. But anyways, I digress. Let's get started. So I'll show the carrot variety that we're planting this time. This is a different variety, so I figured we'd mix it up a bit. This one is called Tonda de Parigi. See, the really cool thing about sowing your own seeds is that you have such an incredible selection when it comes to varieties, and then if you're able to find some very unique seeds online, you can grow them. And these are quite unique. And I've grown seeds from this company before, a good company. Let's open these up. And one thing that's really important when sowing seeds is reading the instructions, or the guidelines rather. And these are sealed up with masking tape. It's good to seal up your seeds. A lot of these packets do not reseal. So having some tape on hand or even just folding down the opening can help the seeds not spilled out. I have had plenty of seed spills in my day and that's not fun to deal with.
Yep, I have too.
Alright, let's open these up. Alright, so I'm going to read this off right now. Tonda di Parigi is Italian for round of Paris and is also called Paris market. It is deep orange, sweet and tender, and the round shape is a unique feature among carrots. Shallow roots mean you can grow it in a shallower bed or even a container. Fun and snack size. This packet sows up to 42 feet. So this is something I also wanted to point out because companion planting is sort of a related topic, or intercropping. So when you have a shallow rooted plant, that means that you can grow it alongside a deeper rooted plant. Peas have kind of shallow-ish and more fibrous roots, and obviously this has like a, more concentrated root system since it's a root crop. So just interesting thing to note. And peas and carrots actually do really grow well together. They sort of help each other out. They don't really compete. Great plants to grow together. The peas will provide a small amount of nitrogen to the carrots, and the carrots actually help to attract beneficial insects that will keep pest populations in check. This is what we like to call stacking functions. So we plant plants that serve more than one function aside from just food. So again, the peas will fix nitrogen, increasing the fertility of the soil, and the carrots will provide habitat for beneficial insects. We're going to plant these in this row right here, and I'll read off the instructions. days to emerge, 10 to 25 days. Seed depth, 1/4 inch. Seed spacing, 1 inch. Row spacing, 6 inches. Thinning, when 1 inch tall, thin to every 2 inches. And these are not quite 1 inch yet, so we're not going to thin these. Many of them are still coming up, so we'll wait on that. When to sow outside. Recommended 2 to 4 weeks before average last frost. Here in Southern California, frost is not really much of a concern. If you really want to be careful, then I would say consider the months where you're likely to get frost, December and January, and possibly February. When soil temperature is at least 45 degrees Fahrenheit, or the soil temperature is way more than 45 degrees now, ideally 60 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, we should be in that range right now. See, and what it says here is successive sowings every 3 weeks until 60 days before first fall frost. And again, we don't really need to worry about that, and because it says in very warm climates, carrots are grown primarily in fall, winter, and spring. I guess they're not as hardy to the warm temperatures we get here in the summer, but if you're closer to the coast, then carrots will definitely be viable year-round. And even here, I think that with an appropriate intercropping scheme or shade, you probably should be able to grow carrots year-round here. So when to start inside, not recommended. Root disturbance stunts growth. That means that when you're growing carrots, you want to sow them directly in the soil and have them remain in the soil for their entire lifespan. So what we're going to do is 1/4 inch deep. So basically just below the surface of the soil, I'm just going to use the shovel right here to move the soil aside, kind of like that.
Does the soil have to be moist already?
It already is moist, yeah. I would recommend sowing seeds in moist soil. Don't sow seeds in dry soil, pre-moisten your soil. And then after you're done sowing, moisten it a little bit again. You really want the seeds to soak up that moisture like a sponge, because that moisture is what actually activates the germination and sends signals to the seeds. It's time to wake up. The seeds will quite literally absorb the water, and then the germination process will be initiated. And we do have a couple volunteers coming up in this bed. We can leave them. And try not to get, because we're using mulch here, try not to allow the mulch to be mixed in below the soil. You really want mulch, like wood chips, to remain on the surface, because what can happen if you have a ton of mulch buried in your soil is it can actually rob nitrogen from your plants, because the bacteria and fungi that begin to break down the mulch will feed heavily off of the nitrogen present in the soil, the free nitrogen, and then your plants won't be able to get the nitrogen they need to grow. So just something important to keep in mind if you are using mulch. We can talk about mulching more extensively in the future. Speaking of beneficials, I always like to show people this. This is some mycelium of beneficial saprophytic fungi. Saprophytic fungi are the kind of fungi that will break down decaying organic material and create humus, which is here's a bunch. Wow.
So this is a fungi?
Yeah, this is fungus.
It's like a white color.
Yeah, it's like those
it looks
white
like
strands.
a web almost.
Yeah, they look like spider webs. So if you see that in your soil, that's good. You definitely want that. And fungi love woody material. That's why forest soils are very fungal, because there's lots of woody material in forests on the floor.
You used a term volunteers. Maybe you want to explain.
Volunteers. Did I not explain that well enough? A volunteer is a plant that you grow in your garden reseeding itself. So the plants that came up after reseeding are volunteers. So let's say you grow tomatoes. Tomatoes very commonly volunteer. If you grow tomatoes one year and a tomato happens to fall on the soil, and then next spring it comes up, the seeds germinate, and then the plant comes up, that's a volunteer. And so it's a crop that you've been growing to seed and germinating naturally in your garden without you having to do anything.
In the garden right now we have sunflowers that were volunteers.
Lots of sunflowers volunteering. Sunflowers also really love to volunteer. Alright, so I'm just going to get the mulch out of here.
Yeah. So with carrots you just sprinkle, right?
Yeah, you just sprinkle them and then you can thin them out. So, and we might even be able to put something in between here, honestly. Maybe some beans. Although beans will get pretty big, so maybe not. This might be a good place for like lettuce, like baby greens. Although I think our lettuce seeds that we currently have are not viable. So you just sprinkle them. Just sprinkle them around. These are old seeds, so we'll be using most of them. We'll try and get rid of them so they don't go to waste because they will be expiring soon.
Yeah,
seeds do not have an indefinite lifespan, but you can increase the lifespan for most seeds by storing them in your refrigerator. I would not do this for tropical seeds because that could actually kill them, but for your typical vegetables, that's fine. So,
yeah, I feel like expiration dates is something people don't always look out for, or at least for me.
Oh yeah, like it's something that a lot of people
dismiss.
Yeah, don't realize is a thing with seeds. They don't last forever. But the ones that last the longest usually are your brassicas. So like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, radishes, kale. Those tend to last quite a long time. Alright, so we've got our seeds. Let's just cover them up nice and gently. And yeah, only 1/4 inch.
Someone asked, so anything that grows naturally is a volunteer? Growth without planting?
Growth without you having to plant them is voluntary.
Yeah.
So just cover this up nice and evenly. And we can go around the garden and give some examples of volunteers if you guys would like.
Yeah.
Because we get tons of volunteers here because we lay down wood chips. And when you lay down wood chips, you build really nice soil. After like a year, really 2 years, wood chips will break down into very high quality soil. Alright. Very cool.
This is exciting.
Yeah, let's get some. It's good to have some mulch coverage. Mulch is great for retaining moisture, and as it breaks down over time, it actually increases the fertility of the soil and will stimulate your soil organisms. The importance of the beneficial biology in your soil is oftentimes overlooked. The approach that I like to take to gardening really involves sort of helping the biology. And because it's, in nature, it's really the biology that feeds your plants. Nobody's going out into a forest and putting down a ton of fertilizer. It's the microbes and bacteria and the fungi and all the other little critters that live in the soil that are responsible for getting the nutrients to the plants. Okay, so that's good.
It's exciting. They want to see the volunteers.
Of course. You can definitely see the volunteers. There's even some in here. Like these radishes. I don't think I planted these.
Oh, I'm covering them. Yeah.
I planted these poppies that are coming up, but I don't think I planted the radishes. Alright, so these are planted now. We'll just light watering. You really just want to re-moisten it. Just re-moisten a row. And we have the drip irrigation running, so it'll get even moisture. So there we are. Looking good. I'm very excited for this bed. I think we're going to be doing a salsa garden here in the spring. So tomatoes, peppers, onions, beans, some root crops, some other stuff. So it'll be a nice
good mixture
thing. But yeah, so we're done here. That's succession planting, and so we planted these, I would say, about 3-4 weeks ago, right?
Maybe.
You and I both did that.
Yeah. The carrots, they took a while to germinate, but they're finally coming up.
Yeah,
so,
carrots take a while.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about succession planting is that as you're harvesting, you have like another harvest waiting for you almost. So it's like, it's nice to layer up things that grow year round.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and even, especially with leafy greens, what you could even do, and this is kind of taking succession planting to the next level, you could just like scatter a bunch of seeds, and as you're thinning them, you're harvesting them as baby greens. So in a way, that's kind of succession planting too. It's more of a continuous harvest. Here's another volunteer right here.
What is that a radish?
It's a brassica. You can tell that it's a brassica because the leaves are lobed. But it's probably a turnip or a radish. I'm guessing a turnip because radish seeds tend to have bigger first leaves,
Yeah,
or cotyledons. The first leaves of a plant are called the cotyledons.
Cotyledons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to do some thinning now that we've done succession planting. So if you follow me over here, we have all these radishes right here that we sowed. And they definitely need to be thinned. They're starting to compete a little bit. So you can see right here, they're pretty dense. So we're going to thin these to about 3 inches, I think you have to do with radishes. So we're going to take out the weak ones. See, you can use these, but you could also do it by hand. I really love these. These are precision shears. It's like a tongue twister. Here's a weed right here. Just to pull that out. You do get weeds sometimes, and weeds are a sign that there's something lacking in your soil usually. So we're going to take these out. This one can come out, but you can see that these radishes are starting to swell up a little bit at the base, which means they're going to be ready quite soon. Radishes are one of the fastest crops you can grow. Under like ideal conditions, radishes will be ready from seed in like 27 days. So 4 weeks.
Wow.
So radishes are very fast. See, this one right here is really strong, so we're going to keep it. And radish greens you can actually eat as well. But I'm just going to lay them down here. What you could also do is the greens, that the thinnings that you take, you could just lay on top of the soil, and they're essentially a mulch. You know, they'll kind of like compost down. You know, you could just leave things where you grew them after you prune them. So this approach is very commonly employed in perennial systems. Again, it's called chop and drop. It's exactly what we did with the fruit trees. You can do that with your annual vegetables too.
Someone asked, what counts as a weed?
What counts as a weed? That depends on how you define the term weed. Generally speaking, the way people see it is like, you know, a weed is any plant that is unwanted in your garden. So like even a volunteer, I guess, could be considered a weed by somebody, but I don't think most people would consider a tomato seedling that's coming up a weed. So whatever, just a plant out of place is how it's oftentimes defined, you know, at least by like, you know, the way that we define, you know, what we want to be growing in our garden. But in nature, weeds are actually pioneer plants, so they're the first plants to colonize an area. Many of them are the first plants to colonize an area. Like very weedy annual plants generally. So like when you have like a volcanic eruption, you know, the first plants that come by are like really weedy annual plants that grow really quickly, die young, and then set a lot of seeds to reproduce as much as possible. And a lot of the plants that we see here as weeds do that. We get a lot of weeds. What's the most common weed that we have here, I think, is sow thistle. But you know, weeds aren't always pioneer plants. We're getting some Bermuda grass there too, and I don't think that's necessarily a pioneer plant. It's just something that likes to take over.
Yeah.
But that one looks really good. So yeah, we're just gonna be trimming these out.
So does that help the stronger plant?
Yeah, we're favoring the stronger ones now. We're the ones that are weak. Oh, there's another volunteer. I think this is a sunflower. See that?
Can't really see it, but
Well, I'll take it out since we don't want it here. But I'm pretty sure that's a sunflower.
oh yeah.
So do you see where I'm cutting them? See, these are the first leaves, the cotyledons. I'm cutting right below that. And so when you cut them, instead of pull them out, what's actually going to happen is the roots that are still underneath the soil will die and then compost directly in the soil. So it's actually better for the soil when you leave the roots in and don't pull them out. To a point, of course. If you have like really tough roots that'll, you know, take a long time to break down, then you might want to actually pull them out. But it just depends on the situation. We got another weed coming up right here. This is a weed, I believe. I think this is sow thistle. Or it might be a wild lettuce. We get a lot of wild lettuce here.
I know a common thing with weeds is that it'll have a straight root. Like
Yes.
it'll go straight down.
Yeah, a lot of weeds have very deep tap roots, and kind of like with our cover crop, we're trying to mimic what weeds do in nature with a cover crop. Like if you have really compacted soil, then the weeds that you're going to see growing there are going to be the weeds with the big, strong, deep tap roots that drill into that soil and break it up. If you have really poor soil that doesn't have a lot of nutrients, you might get weeds that are nitrogen fixers. Like, for example, this vetch right here from a previous cover crop. This is a nitrogen fixer. And a very common weed that is a nitrogen fixer that you get here is called burr clover, or burr medic. It looks like a clover, and it has like these little clusters of yellow flowers. This is another example of a nitrogen fixer, is this vetch right here. I'm actually going to see if I can pull it up.
Look at
to show you guys the nodules.
It's funny to see the cilantro growing randomly.
Yep, volunteer right there. There's
Yeah.
cilantro growing out of nowhere. And these are our cuttings. You can eat these. I mean, I like them. I like radish greens. Let's see. I don't know where the more vetch is. Here we go. The vetch kind of grows like a vine. Very similar growth habit to peas, and yeah, same family. So if we can get in there. I really want to show you all the root nodules, because you know, sometimes you will get nodulation, other times you won't. It depends on if the bacteria are present. Looks like we have a few on here. Not really, unless they came off. Well, if I see another vetch, we'll pull it up and we'll get some root nodules, but this is vetch. And the previous garden manager did sow some cover crops. And you want to see that one?
Oh.
Yeah, you have to be very careful when you pull them up. Here, I think I got it now. Oh no, I did not. Oh well. It's okay. We'll find some nodules for you all. Yeah. So this we can honestly just feed this to the worms. They'll enjoy it. So I'm a huge fan of vermicomposting, honestly. Oh, hello squirrel. Trying to eat our fish food.
Little squirrel. Sea
Squirrel's
sun
trying to eat
or
our fish food.
sea sun squirrels. It's a thing.
I am a huge fan of vermicomposting.
So this is our worm farm.
So worm farms can't really take a lot of material, but they produce some of the best quality compost ever. Worms are essentially beneficial microbe breeding machines that eat your food and eat the bacteria and fungi that feed on your food, and the beneficial bacteria and fungi pass through their gut. And so if you were to take these worms and add them to your soil now, like, they'd bring a bunch of beneficial biology with them. And these worms look very healthy, so they're happy worms. So we're just going to rip these up a bit. Smaller particle size is better, and you'll get like a fungi, like molds growing on them, like this, and the worms will come by and eat them, and the spores will go through their gut, and then you get more molds. See? Mold. I'm not sure what kind this is. It might be trichoderma. I really don't know. But mold on your bread is bad, mold in your garden is good, so. And then this worm farm is pretty cool. The castings just fall down into here.
Yes.
It's like a 3-layer system. And you can then harvest the castings very easily. I like to make the castings into compost tea. You don't get a lot of production of castings, but with compost tea what you're doing is you're taking the beneficial microbes in the castings and you're culturing them out. And we'll definitely do a live on how to make compost tea. I've been using compost tea in my garden for almost a year now, and the results have been just nothing short of spectacular. I guess we can show the aquaponics system. These are kale plants, and they're just about ready to come out. This bed needs to be cleaned, which is why they look a bit sickly. But the fish are doing great. The fish are in the bottom here. We have some Mozambique tilapia down there, and they just love the warm summers that we get here. They love like the 85-degree water. It's their favorite thing ever is to have warm water. So
Someone asked, what can you feed worms?
you can feed worms anything you can put in a normal compost pile, with a couple exceptions. I would avoid citrus because of the acid, and I would avoid onions. I believe worms don't like onions, like onions and garlic and that kind of stuff. But I put all sorts of stuff in there. I put fruit peels. They love fruit and vegetable peels. Just like fruit and vegetable scraps. They love that too. I put leaves from around the garden in there. And just like all sorts of things. Whatever you would put in a normal compost pile. So it's kind of like the same deal, but also you don't want to put coffee grounds in a worm farm because they're too acidic. So stuff that's like really acidic, don't put. Orange, like citrus peels in my experience, in a worm farm, a little bit's okay. And eggshells are good. So like generally this kind of stuff. Shredded paper, a lot of people like to put shredded paper. They'll like go out of their way to find newspaper and put it in there, and that might improve your results, but I don't find it to be necessary. So
Yes.
But you know, most of anything that you put in a compost pile is good. And this is the end result right here. These are worm castings.
Yeah. We'll be talking more about composting in another live.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But we might as well show you guys the compost.
Oh yeah, we can give a little update.
Oh yeah, I actually need to get some gloves because it's really hot right now. So I don't want to burn myself.
So this is our hot compost. This is one side is where you add it, and the other side, sorry, this one is for adding, and this one is when it continually decomposes. So that's how this one is set up. It has two sides to it.
It's very convenient to have a two-sided compost chiller so you could batch process it. And this stuff, you can see it's, from when we checked it last, it looks a lot better. It's really starting to break down. But we want to reduce the particle size even more.
We want to mention the smell.
Yes, we should talk about the smell. So it's always good to smell your compost. This compost smells pretty good. It definitely has a bit of a citrus aroma, because citrus will make compost smell. That's why a lot of people say don't add it. I think adding a little bit is fine, as long as you don't overdo it, because otherwise it could throw off the pH, make it too acidic. But you want compost to sort of have like a nice earthy smell. If it smells like vomit, it's bad. If it smells like rotten eggs, it's bad, because the beneficial microbes that the beneficial aerobic microbes that use oxygen to break down the material have a nice smell to them. It smells like fresh soil. But the bad microbes that produce the bad smells are anaerobic microbes, and they actually produce compounds that are toxic to your plants. Here's an avocado shell. So you want to, if it smells bad, you should worry. This is still growing. Look at that, the Brussels sprout.
Oh wow, it's sprouting.
That means a good environment for that.
I know my compost at home had tomato plant or potato plants growing.
Yeah, mine does too. I have all sorts of stuff growing out of my compost.
Okay, someone asked, if you add compost, do you still need to add fertilizer?
Well, compost is not a fertilizer. So I would say if you've been adding fertilizer to your garden, yes. What compost really is, it does contain nutrients, but what compost really is it is a sort of like inoculum. It has like microbes in it and organic matter. So like what compost can really, the best use of compost in my opinion is to get good microbes into your soil and to keep adding good microbes into your soil.
Like a variety of biology going on, right?
But there is nutrients in compost, and I would say that it could reduce the need for fertilizer. Just like look at your plants and see how they're doing. Do they look like they're not growing very well? Then they might need fertilizer, even if you added compost. And I know that there are some folks who don't use fertilizer at all and just like use a mixture of like a compost and cover crops, and you can do that. Pretty much nothing, and only use it sparingly. But yeah, so compost is fantastic, and the better quality compost, the better results you're going to get. And quality is just like a major thing with compost. You want to have good quality compost, otherwise you won't have good biology in it.
Yeah, variety is best. Good variety of different things.
Yeah, and you can also make different kinds of compost. So one thing that this is kind of on like the cutting edge of soil microbiology, but like depending on what materials you add to your compost, there will be a different bacterial to fungal ratio. And again, you know, like certain plants, you know, like more bacterial soil and others like more fungal soil. Trees like fungal soil. So if you want to, if you have like a fruit orchard or your fruit trees, you want to make. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. We're having some internet trouble. Okay. All right, yeah, so that's our compost. Basically to turn this thing, these tumblers are really easy. That's a great way to get started with composting, is getting one of these. You just kind of turn this handle. So yes. You had this one cut back the fig tree. Now I can actually turn this easily. I like to turn it a couple times. And you want to make sure to keep your compost moist too. If you want like sort of the moisture level of a wrung out sponge, you don't want it too moist because then you're going to deplete the oxygen. You don't want it too dry because then the microbes won't grow. Because it's really the microbes that break down the compost. So what you're doing in compost is you're feeding microbes, and the microbes will turn what you're feeding them into humus, which is like the basis of healthy soil. It's a stable organic material that is found in well-developed soils. That's what humus is. And it's a food source for the microbes and the fungi, which then partner with your plants to help them acquire nutrients and grow and protect them from diseases and stuff.
Yes.
So yeah.
Show the peas.
Yeah, Brianna's been really excited about the peas. You want to talk about the peas?
Yes. So,
I'm gonna get some water.
okay. All right, let me set this here. Okay, I hope you can. I want to set them up well. So, okay, so these are our peas growing, and I planted them like around November, this end of November, beginning of December, and they're doing great. They're starting to flower, so that's a good sign. Yeah, peas are also like a really easy thing that you can grow. So like radishes are very quick. Peas is another good one. And it helps to have like some kind of trellis, so that way you can have something for the peas to climb on. And yeah, this is something that's good for any bean or pea. Yeah, anything in the bean family or legume family, you can use a trellis to help support the plant, because if not, it's gonna drop down and it needs something to climb on. So
a lot of legumes are vining, but not all of them. Some legumes are actually trees.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been doing some interesting work with tree legumes, but not here at the Wellness Guy.
Yeah, and I wanted to show the sunflowers. So
It looks so good.
we talked about the volunteers here. So
These are all volunteers. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, this was from last spring, last summer.
Came right back up.
I had pulled these out because they had already grown and given their seeds, and then they just appeared. So this is very exciting. We're gonna have beautiful sunflowers here soon. Yeah, I think that's it, right?
What's that?
I think we're done.
I mean, we can talk about some more stuff if anybody wants to know. What time is it?
It is around 12:40.
12:40. Yeah, we have some time. Some lovely smelling time. Over there on the other bed. Ha ha ha.
Oh yes, we do have a lot of herbs. Also, like because I still we harvest some herbs and like the sorrel and things that we have growing in the garden, we drop them off to the Sea Sun food pantry. So if you guys have any things that you want to go pick up from there, and if you have like requests, like I'm more than happy to take suggestions if you leave them in the chat, and I can harvest more. So right now we have, or I guess I'll list out the herbs that we have. So we have lavender, rosemary, thyme, oregano, lemon verbena, lemongrass, mint. We have mint. We have a little bit of sage. So
we'll be getting some more herbs in the spring. We're going to include turmeric and ginger, and I've also been looking into some really interesting anti-inflammatory and medicinal herbs for us to include. In fact, just the other day, I took some cuttings of some wild mugwort, some California mugwort, and we might be able to bring that here and grow that.
Mugwort, what is that?
Mugwort is a medicinal herb in the wormwood family, so it's related to the stuff that they use to make absinthe, but it has like calming properties, and it also is good for I believe it's good for helping to stabilize menstrual cycles.
Okay, so there's some research.
I'm not making any medical claims here, but that's what people say. And in my experience, I've had common mugwort in a tea, and it's very much like lavender and its calming effects. It's very similar to lavender.
Okay.
But we'll be including that. I've been interested in including some other medicinal herbs as well. I've done a couple of medicinal herbs. I've grown a couple of medicinal herbs in my day. What was the other one? Maybe a Chinese motherwort. Self-heal is another good one. Valerian roots. A couple ones like that if I can get my hands on some seeds.
Okay.
And maybe even some California native herbs. I have a friend who is a California native plant expert. I know a decent deal about California native plants, but not nearly as much as this guy. And he has been raving to me about how delicious California native sages are when used in cooking. So we might bring some California native sage here eventually.
There's a question. Is mugwort easy to find in stores to make into tea?
You might be able to find a version. There's a Japanese mugwort actually that you might be able to find in an Asian market. I think that's your best place to look, but I'm not sure. I've never had Japanese mugwort before. It is used as a vegetable in Japanese cuisine. I am not sure how its properties are compared to common mugwort or California mugwort. I've only tried common mugwort, but you can get common mugwort seeds online and California mugwort seeds online. So you can look into that. The easiest way to get a plant that you want, or the best way I would say, is to just get seeds and do it.
Yes.
Seeds are very, very, very easy to get online. You can find just about anything except for maybe a couple rare things that are hard to get. The other day I purchased some mimosa tree seeds online because I'm doing work with nitrogen fixing trees. So you can get pretty much anything. Oh, and another interesting herb that we've been growing here that was actually suggested to us by somebody from staff who's interested in this is Moringa. So we have a bunch of that right here actually, and I sent out a survey to the staff saying, what do you want to grow in the wellness garden this year? And if you guys have any suggestions on what you'd like to see us grow, please drop them in the comments. But this is Moringa right here, or Malunge. And so we've been growing this for almost a year now. And we just have like a kind of hedgerow of it. And it's a fantastic superfood and medicinal herb. The leaves are some of the most nutrient-dense, one of the most nutrient-dense vegetables on the planet. And every single part of the plant can be used somehow. The root, the trunk, the bark, the flowers, and it also makes these big seed pods, these big long seed pods up to 3 feet long called drumsticks that are used in cooking. The seeds are supposed to have medicinal properties, the bark and the roots are supposed to have medicinal properties. The seeds can actually be pressed for an oil that's used in beauty products and also to make biofuel. And the seed cake that is left over can be used for water filtration.
Wow.
Very commonly used in developing countries to clean and purify water.
Yeah, I've seen Moringa powder sold. I know you can eat the leaves just like that.
Yeah, and in my experience, it's fairly easy to grow in Southern California. Just give it well-draining soil. It doesn't really require fertilizer. I don't think I've ever fertilized these, maybe once or twice. But yeah, Moringa doesn't really require fertilizer. Just plant it, in some sandy soil with compost amended, and it'll be pretty much good to go. Put it in the hottest, sunniest spot in your entire garden. The more heat you can give it, the better. It's kind of like dormant right now. That's why the leaves are yellow. It's not because it's deficient or anything. It's just from the cold. And when we start to get really warm weather, like especially over 90 degrees, it's just going to get so big. It's going to grow so fast.
Yes, this is very exciting.
And we have some California natives growing under it that I planted as well.
And their peas.
And the peas climbing up. That's another great thing you could do in your garden. Like, you know, stack functions. You know, take one plant and use it to support another. Take the moringa and use it to support peas. And the peas also support the moringa because when you terminate the peas at the end of the season, peas are fixing nitrogen. And that nitrogen that your peas have been fixing is going to be made available to the moringa to help it grow better during the summer.
Wow, the circle of life.
Circle of life. Here's another volunteer. Or is this a California native? I think this is a California native, actually, not a volunteer. But yeah, this is tansy leaf Phacelia. Very beautiful flower that attracts pollinators. California native. This one I think is this is probably baby blue eyes or something like that. And we have some lupines in here too. I'm not sure what happened to them, but lupines are nitrogen fixers. They're one of the native ones. Here's one. Here's some lupines. And here's another California native. This one I think is, I want to say that's a Chinese houses or Colinzia. And these other ones down here, these really tiny ones, are the plantains. You can't really see them, but plantains attract some very rare pollinators. The native, what are they called again? The native plantain, I forgot what it's called. But it's good to include native plants in your garden, and there are a lot of native wildflowers that are fantastic for your garden. They're gorgeous.
Yes, there's some places where you can actually get native plants.
Yeah, I've gotten native seeds online. And also you can find California native seed mixes in the store. Pretty much any store that carries seeds. Any hardware store, any garden store should carry a California native mix if you're in California. And the California native plants, they grow really well. I don't ever fertilize them. They grow just fine. And yes, let's talk about cover crops really quick because I'm not going to go into detail about these because we can do another live on cover crops. I want to do some warm season cover crops in one or more of the beds in the spring. Then we'll do a live on sowing the cover crops. But cover crops are essentially like it's like growing a living manure. Like, you know, you apply manure to your soil to, you know, as a fertilizer. You know, this is green manure. So you're growing plants that will scavenge up excess nutrients from the soil, or that will fix nitrogen, or that will stimulate your beneficial microbes and covering the soil with them. So you're doing all that. You're improving the fertility of the soil, and you're suppressing weeds, and you're attracting beneficial insects for an entire season. So that way, when you want to grow your tomatoes, you want to grow your peppers, your corn, all that stuff, your soil is primed for that. And so we're going to be releasing a video on the YouTube channel very shortly about these cover crops and how you sow cover crops, how you prepare cover crops, and you know, sort of going into more detail into the benefits that they provide and why, you know, cover crops are something that you might want to incorporate into your garden. Now, I will say that you can use cover crops to sort of revitalize old garden soil that you may have bought a while ago, like this. But I feel that, you know, where cover crops are the most beneficial is if you're growing in your native soil and you're trying to like regenerate or improve your native soil. Because, again, you know, as I mentioned earlier, your cover crops are sort of like, you know, it's an engineered weed mixture. Like you're picking plants that are weedy, that have a short life cycle, that grow very fast, that stimulate the biology, that are really good at scavenging nutrients in the soil, and you know, you're growing them out, and then you're killing them at the end of the season and letting them compost in place. And then your other plants will grow sort of in that. So we'll be doing some, I'm not sure what we're going to do in this bed yet. We haven't gotten to that part of the master plan. But we have cover crops in some of the other beds there too. This will really help prime these beds for some nutrient-hungry crops. All right, so I want to open up the floor to questions right now. It's almost time for us to get going. So if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask them. And if you're not able to get your question in, be sure to use the Ask a Master Gardener feature on our website, on the Maryland Magrum Center website. And we will have somebody who is experienced, a master gardener, get back to you with their response via email. But yeah.
I don't see any questions. Okay.
Let's leave it for another minute. How's that sound? I'm just very I'm very impressed by these cover crops. I will say that they're growing very well. It's going to be really nice to see how big they've gotten by the end of the season. Because these are only about a month old right now. I think we sowed them about a month ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. So they're growing really fast.
Okay. Someone asked, why is my aloe vera brownish?
There could be a number of things causing that, but I'm not very familiar with aloe vera, so I'm probably not qualified to answer that question.
I'm familiar with aloe vera.
Yeah, you take this one, Brianna.
Yeah. Well, in my experience with growing aloe vera, sometimes overwatering can make the leaves kind of brown because so it's like it's similar to like the cactus family, and so you don't want to water it too much. And also aloe vera needs a lot of sun, so if it's not in the full sun, sometimes the leaves can turn brown. But yeah, that's my experience with it, is that either it's too much watering or not enough sun. So yeah, that's as best as I could answer that question. Okay, are there plants that can grow at the base of the fruit trees that will be beneficial to both plants?
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of what, because this is actually a question that I've been asking myself. What can you grow at the base of fruit trees? You know, so I would say that like some of your aromatic herbs would be good. So if you have an herb that's like shade tolerant that you want to grow, like mint, definitely grow mint around a fruit tree. I would look into that one a bit more. I've been kind of looking into that because mint can be very invasive. You might want to be careful with that. Also, another good one actually is comfrey to grow around fruit trees. So comfrey has a very, very deep taproot, and it pulls up nutrients from really deep in the soil, and then brings them to the surface, and then it grows these big, huge green leaves that you can just cut off a couple times throughout the year and use them as a mulch around your fruit trees. Then another one that we've been trying over here, let me see. Another one that we've been trying is a California native. Yeah, rain. If you get a lot of rain, that could definitely hurt your succulents. This one, miner's lettuce, right here. You find this growing in the wild underneath like oak trees in very moist spots. So we're trying that to grow under fruit trees, and it is edible. It's delicious. It's kind of like a spinach. I know that in the tropics, they grow this one called pinto peanut underneath fruit trees. I am not sure how well that does here, but you might want to try something else here, like Dutch white clover. That's a bit more suited to more temperate climates. So nitrogen fixtures can be great under certain fruit trees. I would research the individual fruit tree that you're growing to see what people commonly grow with it. I would say look into resources you can find online about agroforestry or permaculture, because permaculture design is all about, like a huge part of it is all about pairing plants together, especially in perennial systems, to create like an ecosystem. Definitely look into permaculture design if you're interested in finding out what you can grow along what you can grow with fruit trees. There's tons and tons and tons of resources on that. And like there's a lot of plant combinations and that have been developed in the permaculture world, so check that out for sure. And that's something I'm still looking into and researching myself, so I don't really feel qualified to speak on it too much.
And yes, aloe vera is a succulent. Sorry, I know I said cactus, but I just Googled it really quick. Yes. Yes, it's from the succulent family. So maybe the rain could have been a cause. I'm not sure. I also try to make sure I harvest my aloe vera often, because I know if it gets crowded, some of the outer leaves start to turn brown. But yeah, sorry I couldn't answer that. The best. Okay. So I think we're gonna end it here, but every week we'll be sharing what the topic is gonna be and learn more together.
Absolutely. We're all still learning.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and the Ask a Master Gardener feature on our website if you have further questions. Join us next week for the next live. I think we're going to be moving it to 1 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. Yes. Have a good one, everyone. Happy growing.
Bye. Okay.